Hi, everybody. We're just talking about every time someone talks, we put 5 cents in a pot. So unfortunately, if we have any questions from anybody that's here, they have to put 5 cents in a pot. So nobody's ever going to talk. So here we go. This one is from Jennifer Butler in New Jersey. And I wrote some stuff down, but I'll just read what she says. I have this idea that our reflexes are generally self-imposed impediments to spiritual growth. Can our reflexes also drive us to do something that is ultimately good for our spiritual growth? Well, it's an interesting question. First of all, I'd just like to say that this brings up another issue. That universal flow or life force or energy or love, whatever you want to call it, is with you all the time. Okay, number one, you use it to create a system that is, from your perspective, functional here on this planet. If you have 8 billion people, 8 billion people are doing the same thing, but not necessarily exactly the same way. So what you're really trying to do is you're engaging with a relationship with a higher state by creating a form here in the matter world that you believe is very valuable in survival on these planes. Of course, you don't think like that. And no one tells you that. You can imagine signing a contract once you get here. And somebody hands you a pen and after you've cried and they put stuff in silver nitrate in your eyes or some solution, make sure that your eyes are okay, and then hand you a pen so you sign this contract. I will only use this higher level that is in me already for the purpose of being exactly perfect in every way, no matter what. Well, nobody gets the pen. Otherwise, you put the pen in some container and keep it for the rest of your life and maybe take a photocopy of the original. The problem is we don't know how we use energy to function in life. We create a system. Now picture this. Maybe you picture your own life while I'm talking. You have this infinite loving flow that will become anything you ask it to become. And it will do that so that you can learn eventually how to see how you function. Because basically, all your reflexes, emotionally, physically, and mentally, have been used to be a person. And you create this persona or this series of personas or way of living that you believe is really important. And it ends up being important relative to how you think the world should be, relative to you. No one likes to hear this because that means you have some responsibility for how you engage with life. Well, look at it from a different point of view. Instead of being positive or negative about it, look at it and say, wow, however I have created things, or whatever help I got in terms of me mimicking somebody else's way of doing things, because we do this reflexively. No matter what that is, it helped me to get to exactly where I am now. This may seem to be meaningless if you look at it from a negative point of view, but if you look at it from a positive point of view, then you realize everything that you've ever done has shaped you, shaped the form that you construct. And every unconscious reflex that you've ever had in your whole lifetime has always been at work trying to help you to create a system that you could survive with. I have no idea why anyone would find that negative, except socially, individually, you may act out in a way that you've constructed, but it may not be helpful in your communication with others, or whether it's helpful or not, you may not notice that it's a has a communication with others. Excuse me just for a minute. It says mute microphone.
No, just continue.
Okay.
It's just option.
Sorry, everybody. I have
the option to mute
signs come up, and so I have to, since I'm ignorant about what that would mean, I have to discuss it with other people. So here you are. You have a system that you use for the purpose of engaging with life. Much of it is reflexive and unconscious. You really don't know exactly how to interpret anything even that becomes conscious, because you already have a whole set of rules reflexively engaged with and developed that you judge other people with. You also would judge yourself with the same rules. You may not see that you operate that, let's say, in a similar way to others, but nonetheless, you have reflex reactions internally. Okay, since you have them and you become slowly conscious of them, now you begin to see them. And you're wondering if you have always been this way or that way or whatever which way it is. But you're trained not to like what you see or to have an opinion about what you see. In whatever anybody says or does, oh, you're included in that. If only you could consciously perceive it. This is training. This is not negativity. This is training. This is what you do to reassert how you are. It's a reflex reaction to make sure that you are preserving how you normally are, even if it is unconscious, doesn't matter. So now look, we're talking about beginning to become consciously aware. So now you have all of this engagement with how you've already constructed a form just to live in the matter world with juice or energy that is in you, that we often call life force or universal force or spiritual force. Then you start realizing you have a conundrum. You're using a level of conscious awareness that has tremendous compassion and love and great wisdom, that its great love for you will always be there, and it will comply with how you engage with life, how you believe it has to be. Wow, that kind of loving is way beyond what we can understand, because we love how we are until we find out how we are. After that, our reflex to assess and judge steps in. Maybe you could try it a different way. You're driving down the road of life, you could say, and you're noticing things. You've been on this road before, but you're noticing things you never noticed before. And some things you really like, and other things you don't like so much. It's against your aesthetics. And yeah, why do people do that? Why do people do this? Why do people do that? Now you're seeing, why do I do this? Why do I do that? If you take a look at it from a point of view where you're just watching and you don't need to react to preserve the way you react. You don't need to react to preserve the way you react. You don't have to act the same way all the time to preserve the way you are. You're just watching and you're looking to try and understand and learn something about how all in the whole of the planet live. Every human being, including yourself. So, what are you doing when you try to do that? You're aligning with a higher state. It only looks, it doesn't judge. Now, of course, you may have been taught that it judges. You know, the guy in the white beard, after you die, gets you, and you come up against it, and they nail you because you've done so many things that are wrong and bad. Not too likely. But what if you could perceive what you saw and slowly and even understand how you did and why you did what you did and saw it as a process of learning? Did you hear the word process? Because it's a hard word to deal with. And the learning is an aspect of becoming involved with an understanding that is deeper than the one that you have when you're assessing other people and judging other people or judging yourself. Because you have not always been bad versus good. You've been good versus so called bad. It's a definition of how you assert your relationship. You assert your relationship in terms of the form that you have already constructed, and you turn it on yourself. That is reasserting your relationship with needing to be the way you have been for the purpose of remaining in the matter world. You're reasserting your own self interest or self importance in that you are important because you act the way you believe you need to act to be validated. And partly that's true because there's lots of good stuff and lots of not so interesting stuff, stuff you don't want to really be a part of it. But everyone moves through these places and it's on a daily basis. We engage, try to understand, but we do this reflexively, and understanding doesn't come into it as much. When we're trying to understand, we're trying to become conscious and make some sense of something. Intellectually, you can't make sense of how important you are because you make sense of something. God, that's a strange statement. It's not about an intellectual engagement. It's about, or an emotional, reflexive engagement, or even a physical, active involvement with adjusting how one needs to do things physically, physical personality. It's about being willing to allow yourself to notice how you function. This is not easy for most of us. And then not judging. In almost every philosophical background, the concept of judgment does not help an individual to become different than how they were. It exacerbates how they were. You can't let go of something that's been helpful from your perspective. It doesn't make sense. You can't move from it because it's being helpful. And that's a non-conscious statement as well as a conscious one. So when you're dealing with learning how to engage with higher states, what you're really dealing with is trying to understand with some level of clarity relative to you, not relative to anybody else. Since you know you grow through you, you will seek out a constructed form slightly different than what you knew before to lean on for the purpose of being validated as a spiritual person. This is what you'll do emotionally, mentally, quite physically. Or you'll come up with reasons why you need to validate your personality as a spiritual being when you can't allow yourself to be as honest within yourself as you need to be okay with you. Can you honestly say, my goodness, this is part of my life experience? My goodness, I'm uncomfortable with this, but it is still part of my life experience. Do I need to reassert it? I'll have a reflex to do that, but do I need to? Well, the unconscious aspect says, yes, I need to, or I will lose it. Judgment does that. Elevation of you does the same thing. It's well known in truly highly spiritual circles that the gift of being able to perceive includes the gift of understanding in a compassionate way all others because you see them in you. And you then begin to learn that negating them or you serves no purpose. Now, I'm talking about engaging at a spiritual level, meaning a consciously perceptive level. Now, here's the thing. It is very difficult to become conscious of another and their transmission, which is normal because we are transmitters of consciousness. Their transmission in you, if you are focused on negating you or elevating you in terms of a judgment of either one, because you will be focused on the purpose and reason for the judgment, and that is to negate them to protect you. It's part of the same coin. Wow. So sometimes by saying that, you can see that you are actually involved with the personality that you use here in the matter world. Because you will have opinions about almost everyone and everything. You'll have opinions about this statement. It's your right. It's not negative, but it's an opinion. You may have a belief that says it's the only truth that you can come up with, and that will be a truth that you come up with respect to what I'm talking about. That will be an option. And you'll have the sense that you need to believe in what you think rather than what someone else may have come up with. I'm asking you to do the research from a point of view where you can watch without negating, even in small bits. In those small bits, energy comes in the same way and increases small bits into bigger bits. If you get angry all the time, you will become more angry. If you get caring for people, even though you don't want to because it's too hurtful, more caring will occur for people. Until you get to the point where you know that caring for people doesn't have anything to do with having them follow your rules and regulations. People never do follow anybody else's rules and regulations. They follow their own. This is very difficult for anyone who really cares for anybody. It would be much better, of course, if they followed your rules and regulations. then you could care for them. The only problem is you'd be changing your rules and regulations all the time, and they couldn't keep up. That isn't negative. That's just what we do. How to broaden out our relationship and our understanding. How to be okay with the things that we do and recognize that we will have reflex reactions to these things, which will embed those reflex reactions in us for the next time we need them. How to do that? Try to be respectful for you, best you can. How to be a little bit kinder. And try to remember when you're more respectful for you and kinder to yourself. That applies to others as well. Realize that we can't do this really well when we're not considering it consciously. We will be ourselves reflexively when our emotions are too fast to respond to an old way of engaging. These older methods that we all have are methods that are tried and true for us. Not probably as clearly real as what we believe, but we believe they're tried and true for us. That's why we don't want to let them go. And we're afraid. Fear is a big thing. Every philosophy has said the same thing. Every religious background has said the same thing. Yet many religions and many systems have come up with the idea that if you don't do this, you will be in trouble. If you do this, you'll be in trouble. And some of those have been kind of semi-helpful and some of them haven't, because they've caused big gaps in people who already have love in them and are able literally to engage with that love in a different perspective, but they build up an armor and then they protect the armor and then they get angry and frustrated, resentful, and they fall in love with their love for their own armor, their own whatever they put on, the metaphorical clothing that they are constantly developing and reshaping and maintaining. That is normal in our world. If you see that as bad or good, that's normal also in our world, but it doesn't mean it's of great value. It means we're locked into a reflex. And the only way to get out of a reflex is to see it. Talk to yourself about it. You could probably engage with others and talk about it. But be careful. The more you talk about it with others, the more you think that it's really something that you lose in 10 seconds after you talk about it. It helps, but it will come back. Why? For the same reason that you bring back your own normal reactions, because it served the purpose previously. So why even therapy is important is that so you can get a handle on speaking out loud about the thing that you think you see, so that when you see it again, more energy comes in to help you to see it. Then you can learn how to not necessarily do it as much. But you know, as well as I, you do something habitually, and you will tend to do it reflexively, habitually, no matter whether you see it or not, because you're protecting how you have been, and nobody is going to tell you what to do. In a way, That engages with another question. The question of what happens when you grow spiritually. It's part of Jennifer's question as well. It's a very interesting thing to me. When you grow spiritually, what begins to happen is it increases your will. Whoa. It increases a kind of will that relates to, maybe I should start somewhere else, but I'll start there. It relates to you engaging and protecting your own way of living life. That's a sense of willfulness. Nothing negative there. It's just how it works. Okay, let's talk about the chakras because it's important. If you perceive the chakras, if you're starting to perceive the chakras, you will notice by doing your own personal research that if there is an increase in any other chakra or center or Zephyroth, whatever your name thinks, it's okay. If there is an increase in any of the ones above the diaphragm or below the diaphragm, either way, if there is an increase in any one of the centers, and I always like to talk about the throat center because it's the one that the Hindus and the Buddhists have been working on for a long time. And it's a powerful thing because it eventually helps you to link up with higher states consciously by quietening down the mental facility. But at the same time, as you open up any center, let's say above the diaphragm or below the diaphragm, all others that are connected with it are increased. Want an example? Let's try this one. I'll try a couple, maybe three. We'll see if I have time. Let's say the root center increases, and you've already had energy move through to the top of the head, or let's say to the brow. Either one, doesn't matter. That includes all the centers in between. So let's say energy increases at the root center and moves all the way up to the top of the head. And the crown center comes on a little strong. Then energy then moves down from the crown center through all of the centers that are below it into the lower centers, increases the energy in the lower centers. Now, you know that you have root gonad and solar plexus center that are pivotal in the engagement that you have with the matter worlds. They are not negative at all. They're pivotal in how you deal with these matter worlds. And they have a job, and their job is to find balance, how to function, and how to function in the matter world. You need to be able to function in the matter world. If all your higher centers are on, and they have not broadened out those lower centers, you will not function well in the matter world. This I know for sure. Guaranteed. Personal research. So here you are. You have an increase in the root center, an increase in the gonad center, increase in the solar plexus, increase in the heart center, increase in the throat center, increase in the brow center, and any other center that happens to be open. So you've come full circle there. You've had an increase in the root center. Energy has come up and increased every center just a little bit more. By opening the crown center or the brow center, whatever, energy will move back down and broaden out the lower centers. What do you have to do? You have to learn how to be more comfortable with seeing you more. What's The normal way of dealing with that? Hide, run. Let's not see exactly what is there. Let's go back into the older states where, or you could say younger states, it's up to you. It's just language. Remember, language is only language. That's all it is. You're learning how to engage. And you have an increase in your territorial reflex, your willfulness, and your emotional disposition, which feeds that brow center and makes it protect like crazy anything that relates to your personas. Because that's what it's supposed to do. It's not negative, it's just doing what it needs to do. And suddenly you realize an interesting thing. As well as that happening, there's an aspect within you that is watching it. That may be new for you, but it may not be new for you. You might have already figured out that every now and then you're not as sweet as you thought you were. And you didn't consider that as right. You're starting to consider it as, oh my goodness, I have that characteristic like others do. And I don't like it in others, but oh, there it is in me. Learning how to step back from that and soften that down, your reaction, because your reaction will instigate a hardening of all the characteristics that you use for the purpose of protecting you from any kind of change. I don't care what the change is. If it is not considered important by you, almost like a conscious incentive. This is a consistent engagement with growth. This gets stronger. What gets stronger? Your ability to perceive and watch. It cultivates compassion for yourself and for others. In the early days, it cultivates self-interest and frustration with the fact that you see something that you have never seen before. Being kind right there is important. Being respectful of the persona structure that you have, but not necessarily in agreement with it. Then you are the one who's looking at shifting and changing it. No one else. No one else. Other people can help you have more energy flow through you, but they cannot insist on you doing something that you've already locked into and believe is the only way to be. By not being able to do that doesn't mean that you're bad. All it means is not able to do that yet. I used to put a lot of emphasis on a little bit of a phrase after every statement. I can't do that, comma, yet. But I can see it a little bit more, but not a lot yet. Be happy you see it a little bit and soften down. You're trying to help your reactions to soften down and learning how to be respectful. And one thing that is really important is how to find a balance internally, personally. So where did we leave off? Well, the gonad center is next. So if the gonad center and root center is both open more, and energy moves up towards the ground, and it does, and it also can come down from above as well. Either way, you're ready for this. Here it comes. Whether it's up from the bottom or down from above, because above is everywhere. What happens is the valves or chakras or zephyroth or whatever you want to call them are stretched more. So it helps you to perceive more. So remember now, you're looking to try and balance that off, taking it easy, dialoguing with yourself. You can use energy. You can Create a vortex if you wish, a triangle. Open your hands just with the mind, transmitting just by looking, simple thing. And you're asking for transmutation and healing for all of your being. Wow. And then you step back. You're not trying to impose the healing of your personality on it. You have to allow yourself to be okay with stepping back. It's not your nature to do that. The nature of a human being is to impose his or her will and to validate it in the same breath. It seems vital to do that. If you don't do that, then who's in charge of you? And therefore, who's in charge of the world? What you're trying to do is mix with a sense of becoming consciously aware, not validating you as the person who's more consciously aware. You have to have a willingness to go beyond the willfulness, the self-importance that you have with every act of engagement, ever so slightly, so you can see better. You can't do it all at once. You can't be as able. Oh, sorry, maybe I shouldn't say that. Some people advocate that they can. They can see everything about anybody and know exactly where they are, but it usually ends up being their personality. And that means they're not out of their personality stages either. And then having a discussion about how people are right, wrong, good, bad, and all the rest of it. This doesn't shake out. What you're learning how to do is become conscious of a sense of loving that includes you, that includes others, and understands the limitations of where we are currently as a species, even, but individually as well. So that you can be okay with what you see and slowly pull back from reflex reactions that are embedded in our relationship with the form that enables us to survive when it's necessary to survive. It is not necessary for us to survive every second of the day. Our day is engaging with others, and there's no need to be heavily embedded with survival tools at the time. If we are trained to do that, we will believe we need to. And sometimes we have to, but it's not always true. And remember, everyone else is doing the same thing. That's what keeps the species at this particular level of engagement with love. We love what we see, do, whatever, or not do. We have a sense of loving that. That's love. That broadens out. Absolutely difficult. Absolutely difficult to restrain ourselves a little bit from a diet that we already know and use. The one of this has to be right, that has to be wrong, this has to be this has to be that. But slowly, you can begin to understand the level of vulnerability that we have, so that we need to reassert the same activity that we have used for years and years and years, so that we can be like how we were trained, even if we don't know how that is. We're trying to learn how to go beyond into a state where how we are is okay until we aren't that way exactly. We're just moving slowly into an understanding beyond what we could allow before, into a place where we can engage with higher states at the same time as we're engaging with lower states, and understand with some compassion and understanding and love, if you will. Love in the sense that we understand how difficult it is for us or others to make some sense of a deeper level when their focus is on the surface and the need is still great to be there. Uh, that journey, the Christian journey of the Good Samaritan being on the side of the road, and no one, in those days, Samaritans, they were looked down upon like garbage. That's why the word Samaritan was used in the New Testament, because they were thought to be junk, not worth anything. In those days, slavery was pretty big, and Samaritans were slaves, and when they were hurt, nobody paid attention, they were chattel. But someone stopped to give this person a hand out of great danger to themselves. This is a metaphor. When you stop to be in love with the love that is unceasing, always engaging, never not there, you run the risk of being on the roadside of life from your perspective or your belief in terms of the personalized will being open to engaging with another or others, including yourself, as worthy of your oneness, your loving, in a sense, to not interfere with the help of a higher state and what it can give. There is an honest desperation in that. How can we reach that phase of engagement when we adore only our matter world form? Well, here's why. Here's how. You should be in love with the matter world form. It's helped you. But it's not the only one that's helped you. 18 billion people have matter forms that have helped them. Would you consider that possibly there may be options other than the one you're using? But if you look at 18 billion people who are aching to be loved, to be helped in 1 second, and 18 billion people hoping never to change a single thing because they're too afraid that something that they love internally may change as well. Then you've got a pretty good idea how all of the people on the planet are deep down, and how important the things on the surface are. Here we go, and bouncing it around. The loop is almost complete. You are important to you the way you believe you need to be for the purpose of existing the way you think you are existing versus other people's form of existence. That's pretty scary. Because that means If you have an increase in consciousness, in energy coming into you, the energy will come into you where you can handle it. If it be the throat center and all those centers behind the back and the neck, if it be your brow center, if it be your heart center, if it be your crown, the lower systems will be expanded and you will have more energy to retain how you were before. And also to be important for being spiritual because you have an increase. This happened in the 70s. There was a huge bump of energy in about 1972 or 3. I opt for 73. And in that time, a large amount of energy came into the systems of people who were meditators. Thousands and thousands and thousands of meditators in the 70s quit. They had a revelation. They had to get back into the world and make money and have families. This was absolutely an act of engagement with higher states. Do you understand? There was a reconstruction of the root gonad and solar plexus because they already had some of those upper centers turned on. And it was increased tremendously. First thing they had in their reflex response, have families, have family, have comfort zones, have houses, have this and that. Because many of them hadn't worked for a few years. They were in ashrams. And they shifted. Their increase in the ability to handle love coming into them pressed them into a broadening which related to the matter world, so that the matter world, our worlds, could learn how to handle more energy, more love, and it was converted into family, love, friends, engagement with life in a very positive way relative to the matter world. This is not a negative thing that happened. This was huge, profound, and vital to the growth of our species. And why would I say that? Because slowly, because they were so fearful, they engaged with this matter world, not even knowing they were afraid. And there they are. Now they're starting to come back and engage more with meditation again, with a hope to be at one with higher states again, to have more love come in so that they can broaden again and help the species to broaden. This is not always known to them, but they are wondrously equipped because they found a balance in the matter world with the energies that were coming into them in the 70s. A hugely important cycle of engagement with higher states. You can see by this conversation that life in the spiritual realms and the matter world, you want to straddle both worlds, is complicated. Often we go through cycles of becoming really important because we can do different things, different than a normal person, all that sort of stuff. That will pass. You'll loosen up the personality aspects, and you won't care so much about the personality aspects, you'll want to go deeper and link up with that sense of loving so that you can move the personality back and let energy come in to be helpful to the whole species. But you will not want to be unconscious with it. You'll probably want to be more consciously aware that it's really real. That's a part of the process of internal growth. Everyone is doing their own research, and it's not only about books. You can't get there through the intellect. But you can learn stuff that if you have experiences that are really difficult for you, maybe you can learn how to balance your internal personality so it doesn't get too pumped up with its own aggrandizement. That's not love. That's an elevation of an individual so that they're not afraid or that they feel superior to other people. This is very interesting. Of course, you remember that every one of the centers that we have has its coarsest or coarser natures. And these natures play out in our world so that we can find balance in it and soften down those coarser natures. Even some of the beliefs that we have about violet being a spiritual thing, it has a really coarse nature. Any other colors, coarse nature? We seem to look at things in a surface way, and we're learning to become slightly more consciously aware, hopefully a little deeper, so that we can get to the point where we can actually perceive these valves in action and understand deeper and have great respect for those who are dealing with difficult things, as well as respect for others who are helping us along the way in our spiritual movement towards a different understanding and a different state of perception and engagement with others. I want to thank you for listening. Good night, everybody.